Dedicated to the underrepresented professionals in the job market, Color at Work emerges as a safe space for sharing, empowering, and strengthening the experiences of individuals who contribute to the diversity of talents and existing potential in the workplace. My name is Sofia Medina Andrade, and I believe in the effectiveness of diversity and inclusion in achieving a more dignified and fair working world. Welcome to the space. Hello, community. How many times have we wished for books that truly reflect the reality of European lives and experiences? And how often have we hoped that DEI conversations were grounded not only in European contextual information, but also the systemic nuances we navigate every day? Today's guest, Tamara Makoni, had the same very thoughts. Drawing from many years of experience in DEI, the data she gathered, and the strength of her extensive network, she wrote her first book, Women, Intersectionality, and Europe, published early this year. Born in the United States to Zimbabwean immigrant parents, Tamara grew up across the US, the UK, and Zimbabwe, and now she lives and works in Brussels, in Belgium. With a background in philosophy and psychoanalysis, she began her career in technology as a software developer at Deloitte, where she discovered a deep connection between her love for data, people, and cultural intelligence and the world of inclusion. Since then, she has built her own consultancy work with clients all over Europe, and in 2024, she was recognized as one of Europe's leading voices on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Multifaceted as ever, Tamara has hosted events, moderated workshops, and now added author to the list of her achievements. Impressive, isn't it? In today's episode, which also happens to be the final episode of Season 5, we will dive into Tamara's personal journey, her book, her predictions for the future of DEI in 2026, and much more. It's with great pleasure that I say hi, Tamara, and very welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation and being part of your lovely podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I would like to start with a personal curiosity from my side, that it's basically if you have to think back or look back to your childhood in the US, in Zimbabwe, in the UK, is there a moment that now feels like the seed of your DEI calling? Something that you didn't realize at the time?
I think that's such an interesting question to start with. And in fact, yes, it really is what you mentioned. The start of my story is where my passion for DEI took hold. But as you suggest, I didn't realize at the time. It was only when I started looking back in my adulthood that I realized it was almost inevitable from the beginning. Because as you mentioned, I was born in America, more specifically in Washington, D.C. My family is from Zimbabwe. So from the very moment that I was born and I understood my identity and who I was, I knew that I had this duality to me. It wasn't a simple story of who I was, where I found myself, where my family was from. There were lots of ands. I'm Zimbabwean, and I am American, and I live in one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world, with so many people from across America and across the world in the diplomatic corps, global NGOs, etc. So I was always exposed to difference, and always in a state of understanding myself as a complex network of ands, rather than thinking that I was homogenous or living in some homogenous way in some way. So that was my first experience. My family moved from the US when I was 5, almost 6 years old. And then we lived in the UK for a while, moved to Zimbabwe, as you said, back to the UK. Now I live in Belgium. So my journey continued from then. And I've had the privilege of always being in different communities, surrounded by people whose lives are similar to mine in some ways, but also different in others, and being able to learn how to adapt, how to acknowledge these differences, bridge the differences, etc. So it's really no wonder that in my professional life, working as a consultant, it's been a big part of the work that I do and the viewpoint that I carry into my work, and also in my personal life. It's almost a very fortunate accident that I ended up in Brussels, which, as you may know, is the most cosmopolitan city after Dubai in the world in terms of number of nationalities living here. So yeah, I think this story has been turning over from the beginning. It's no surprise that I'm living the life that I am and doing the work that I do when you look at it that way.
And you put it in such a beautiful way. And also the way that you do things. Also, your professional path is not conventional. Because usually people think, okay, if you study this and that, you will most likely do this number of, or you might have this number of options. And it seems like your journey was like basically proving it wrong. Because not only you went to work at Deloitte, that is a big four, but also you went to work as a software developer that has nothing to do with it. It's completely different. And this shows also that you are someone, at least in my perspective, that you are a quick learner, that these experiences that you had moving around, connecting with different people, make you someone that it's very sociable, but also very good understanding people as well. But at the same time, you just wrote a book this year, a book that I'm very happy when I saw on LinkedIn that you wrote this book. I was just like, yes, because I myself, and I believe everyone, a lot of people were waiting for. And then when we were talking enough, you told me that you wrote this book in 6 months, which to be honest,
yes,
it still amazes me, you know? But at the same time, I'm just like, is there any moment during the process that you realized that the assumptions that you held about intersectionality in Europe were changing?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was a very intense process. I think that's the best word to describe it. It was very intense from starting to write the book last June, finishing it in December, and then getting it out the door published this year, 2025. But I've been working on the topic for many years. So it's not like I only heard about intersectionality middle of last year and then thought, ooh, book, and out it came. This is a topic that I've been working on and been passionate about for so many years now. I think for me, because of my background, when I heard about intersectionality, then there was an aha moment. Oh, different parts of our identity intersect. They overlap. There's this plurality to all of us, and this is how we move through the world. It was so helpful in understanding my own experiences, and many people I talk to have had that similar aha moment. And thank you for what you're saying about the book, just the reception you've been saying. I've been really gratified by people saying that this was a book they were looking for, that they weren't seeing. I had noticed the gap, and that's why I wanted to write this and put these stories out there. But it's lovely hearing others say that this was something that will really add value to their experience and their understanding. So in response to your question about did anything change in my understanding of intersectionality or my viewpoint, I would say no, not really. Nothing changed, but it was a big process of discovery. As I started to really dig into it and put all the threads together, then some correlations I hadn't seen before did arise, or things that were a bit fuzzy before became a lot clearer. There were some things I saw that were confirming what I knew already from talking to people, from the work that I do, but I didn't realize the state of it, the scale of it. Some things were very, very alarming. For instance, I'll just give you one example from the book. When I was doing research about ethnicity, there's a chapter about race and ethnicity called Where Are You Really From? Hinting at a question that many people of global majority background get asked pretty frequently in Europe and as they move through the world, then it was looking at the discrimination and challenges that many people of global majority heritage face. And I was looking further into this research in terms of migration and security and European attitudes to it, particularly in the EU, looking at legislation, initiatives, etc., and looking at Frontex and how much money is invested each year in Frontex, which is the European agency for securing the European Union's borders, essentially, and came across a very, I would say, alarming piece of information that from 2005 to 2023, the annual budget of Frontex went from 5 million to 845 million euros, an increase of 16,800%. I had to calculate this many, many times, just looking at these figures again and again. I was thinking, this can't be true. But yep, the information is there. The references in the book, freely available to anyone who wants to look. An increase of almost 17,000% in terms of the euros spent on securing the European Union's borders from 2005 to 2023. So I knew, of course, from the discourse in Europe, from reading the papers, talking to people, etc., that this is something that is very important and becoming more so in recent years. But I didn't realize the scale of it. So doing this project really helped me get 50-50 vision of what is going on in terms of things like this.
And it's such a shocking data, to be honest. It's interesting that you got that information in the book because it's shocking. But at the same time, as you said, it's not a surprise, the political climate in Europe. And this makes me also wonder, I have two questions, because one is just that you said, okay, I didn't find anything new. There wasn't something here that really changed my mind, but there were some things that became clear. What was blurred until the time that all of a sudden, when writing the book, you're just like, okay, I see it with such a clarity now.
One thing definitely that I had a lot more clarity on that I didn't really understand and hadn't really unraveled was ageism, the scale and prevalence of ageism in Europe. Looking at, for instance, research showing, I was able to go to a conference while I was still writing the book, so incorporate this into the research, where a researcher was talking about some surveys they did across European managers across the continent, looking at discrimination, whether they're aware of different types of discrimination, whether they're exhibiting them, etc., and found that, yes, discrimination on factors like LGBTQ status, on age, on ethnicity, for instance, disability, were factors that were coming into hiring decisions and promotion decisions. But very interestingly, it was only age discrimination that managers said that they were largely aware that they were discriminating against candidates or for candidates on account of. And it seemed very much a case of people felt that it was okay to discriminate on the basis of age, whereas other things like discriminating on the account of gender or ethnicity, people were saying, no, that's not okay. We need to unpack our biases. But for age discrimination, there was a level of, yeah, that's okay. That's fair game, isn't it? So again, this was something that I was aware was an issue in Europe, but I didn't realize things like this, that psychological factor. Also, in the chapter on age, I unlock the fact that age discrimination isn't just a monolith, something that occurs uniformly across their lifetimes. It's actually something that occurs in different contextual ways at different stages. So I go through in the chapter looking at, for instance, older women, particularly in the workplace, looking at younger women, women who are in the middle, who are neither older, say about 40 and above, or younger, so under the age of 30. And then also looking at women of childbearing age, something that spans different generations, and looking at specific and unique types of discrimination that women experience across all European countries on account of their age and their gender at these specific stages. Yeah, for me, that was a moment of clarity, looking at the fact that, yes, this exists, but this is a lot more nuanced than I had imagined.
Exactly, the nuances. And this also makes me wonder, what is the conversation or the type of conversation you wish more Europeans would engage in, but they still tend to avoid? Because you got a lot of data in this book, research that made you also get to different type of conclusions. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
A conversation that I wish more of us would engage in is talking about the systemic nature of many of the issues that we face in society, many of the discriminations and biases. I think that there's still reluctance to go there, to scratch that and see the full scale of it and acknowledge it. There's often talk about individual actors, bad apples. That is a bad person, that person who perhaps is showing racist behavior or ageist behavior, but they're a unique case. We'll deal with that case and then society will be okay. Whereas we can really see all the evidence pointing to the fact that it's systemic. It pervades society. And because it's systemic and we don't address it on that level, and we instead just try to look for the individual bad actors, as it were, then we really are on the back foot in terms of actually dealing with it appropriately and changing society.
Sometimes I'm under the impression that it's kind of a distraction for the main problem by pointing it out like to individuals, right? And then it's just like, let's leave the structures sacred and untouched.
Exactly.
So it's quite tricky, huh? It's quite tricky. And I'm also curious because you have written this book after establishing a good network in terms of clients? You are someone that is very respected into this DEI work here in Europe. People know you in the network, they have a certain image of you, and now releasing this book this year, for what you told us, and especially for people who haven't read the book yet, we already can tell that, okay, it touches with data information that we don't talk about, that we don't see as often as we would like to, especially when it comes to the European landscape. So how did your clients and your network have perceived you after knowing the content of the book that you have written?
My clients and my network directly impacted me in terms of why I wrote the book. I'll be honest about that. Writing has been something that I've done throughout my life, actually, but just for myself. I've actually written books before, mainly fiction works, but I never planned to publish them. They were just things that I did because I enjoy writing and it was just a hobby. So that's why I was able to write this in 6 months. It's not my first rodeo, as it were. But this was the first time I wanted to publish something. And I wanted to publish this, I think, largely because I'm very passionate about it, as I'm sure you can tell. I think there was a real gap. And this gap is about the fact that when I was working with clients, speaking with them about DE&I in a European context, I found that there was a level of receptiveness, which was great, but also some healthy skepticism in terms of words like intersectionality, inclusion, equity. They were really coined in the US. Definitely intersectionality, of course, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, straight from the US, essentially. So if these are American terms and they came out of American culture and American society, do they actually matter to us in Europe? How do they apply? Are they relevant to our lives? And of course, my answer to this was always a big yes. But it was very hard to really make the point and, hammer that point in when the books that I was suggesting they read are from America. When I'm bringing in information from America to demonstrate the point, I'm like, okay, this is a huge gap. I need to find somewhere we can provide European data and show this is how it lives and breathes and why it is relevant to European society. So that was a big why behind why I sat down and thought, let me see if I can create something to fill that gap, which then turned into Women, Intersectionality in Europe. And another thing that I find is very important around my clientele, because as you'll know, I work mainly focused on inclusion, building inclusive societies and inclusive communities, working on inclusive leadership with organizations, for instance. And so some people have been very surprised about the focus of this book and saying this is very niche in a sense, and it's more about gender equality, looking at women in Europe. Where's the broad line about inclusion? How does this all fit in? But one thing that I always have to say is that in order to really be inclusive, you have to look at the specifics. You can't just be high level, let's just take everything one size fits all. That's not the case. And as the book demonstrates, women do not all have the same life within Europe. So if you're planning solutions for women, you're going to have to get specific and look at what that actually means in terms of the nuances. And if we look across all genders as well, people of every gender in Europe do not have the same lives. So if we want to have more inclusive workplaces, communities, more inclusive society in general, then we have to get very granular. We have to dig into the nuance and look at the specifics. So one of my intentions with writing the book was to turn on the lights. That's a metaphor that I use often in the book, turning on the lights and spotlighting the diversity that we have here in Europe and the lives that people live here, the stories that we have to tell, the data that there is about who we are as Europeans, people living in Europe. So I would really like to see more research being taken on like this, more books like this, more artworks, podcasts, movies, however people want to find their creative outlet. It doesn't have to be a book, but I'd really like to see more of this so we can demonstrate how it is for us here in Europe, how it matters to us in our society, and how it comes about. And through that, achieve a truly inclusive society.
I'm very happy to hear it. And you were talking, I was just like, yes. And also there is something that I find quite common. It's kind of a criticism that is just like, why, when talking on inclusion, you focus on this specific layer of inclusion? Why aren't you more inclusive if we are talking about inclusion? And I completely agree with you. And honestly, if we try to gather every part of inclusion in every specific work that we do, we won't get actually work done and we won't be effective in any. So really happy and using your expression that you are bringing the light on some like spotlighting some parts or nuances of inclusion that are very important. And of course, we as Black women, when we talk about intersectionality, it's something that for us, we are just like, yes, it's part of our daily lives. And even enough, we were talking and I was just like, okay, I want to know how was your experience in the UK, for instance, compared to mine here in Portugal. So, of course, we always have this type of conversations, and I feel that it's enough.
Yes. And I feel in some way that as Black women, intersectionality is our legacy, or I'm not sure I'm saying that the right way, but Black women have been so instrumental to giving us intersectional theory. I think that's a better way to put it. Black women really have been instrumental to the history. I'd say women from global majority backgrounds, because it isn't just Black women, but broadly speaking, women of global majority backgrounds have been instrumental to the development and understanding of intersectional theory. And at the beginning of the book, I have a chapter called Understanding Intersectionality, going into the history, looking back at Sojourner Truth, for instance, and her famous Ain't I a Woman speech, looking at the nuances of that, looking at Latin American women who were writing books even before the term intersectionality was coined, that brought together these strands, understanding that types of oppression work together. They don't work in isolation. We have to understand that if we truly want to liberate people and have inclusion. Looking at the Combahee River collection with thinkers like Audre Lorde, Barbara Smith, for instance. Then 1989, Kimberlé Crenshaw, another Black woman, coining the term intersectionality. This side of the Atlantic as well, many voices of women of global majority heritage have been involved in pointing out these things and showing how the substance of their lives and the issues that they have are being caused by the ands, not just gender, not just ethnicity, not just sexual orientation, for instance. All of these and more intertwined, class as well. So I think it's really something beautiful to behold. And I think it was really lovely for me to be able to be part of this tradition, as it were, and make my contribution to it. But I want to pick up on something you said earlier about how with inclusion, then you have to look at the nuances and look at the details. Yes, but there has to be a balance between looking at the details and actually trying to get some solutions to move forward, because you can't, of course, have a solution that takes everybody's specific life into consideration. We would never move forward in that way. And so one thing I mention in the book is looking at things like representation and participation, and mentioning that, for instance, the issue with lack of representation in parliaments is not that we don't have one member of parliament for every single person living in that specific region or country, for instance. We don't need to have one-to-one direct representation. But the representation that we do see, the parliamentarians, their makeup needs to reflect the makeup of the people that they are serving. That is why when you have parliaments that are, for instance, 80% male, as we do in some European countries, that's not okay, because the population is not 80% male, things like this. And so then when we end up with so little representation for the female population, then the chance of issues that actually matter to women's lives getting put on the agenda is just minuscule, let alone the intersectional agenda, or at least the intersectional issues, having an understanding of those and willingness to work on them. So it is very important to have that balance. But it is something that is very manageable. It is not something that is too complicated. It's too nuanced. No, there are very concrete ways that we can do this to have inclusive solution building.
Hello, community. It's always amazing to see how connections can lead us to discover new perspectives and insights. Now, I want to hear from you. How you're finding this episode? Did you know that Color at Work is available on all podcast platforms? We are also on Instagram and most recently on TikTok. So you can find us by searching Color at Work Podcast. I can't wait to hear your comments, engage with you, and in this way create a space for us. I will see you there. And I really like the way that you explained representation, because that's the thing. You explained it in a very specific context, that it's politics, but makes total sense because it's something that, wanting or not, being engaged or not, affects everyone's lives. And it's also a workspace. And so how will you tackle problems that are related to a reality in which you have no clue of and no experience, lived experience? So it makes sense. Also, one more reason why I'm so happy that you are writing this book and that we are talking about it. Also, you explain what representation is in a context that it's very, very understandable, and it resonates with everyone's lives, wanting or not. So thank you also for that. And this also makes me want to understand if there is any project that it's very dear, that you hold to your heart, and it's just like, yes, it's a project that has changed me, has allowed me to put in practice the vision that I have for DEI, and it's still like alive, even though you are not maybe still working on it.
Yes, definitely. At least one project comes to mind. It's one called Spark DEI that I was very fortunate to work on. I've started it in the middle of 2022, so a little while now, working on it with Enough Foundation, great team of people there that had a vision, a dream, an idea. That's how these things always start, don't they? All the good things. So talking with the director of the foundation at the time, who wanted to see how to build communities for racialized people and explore this idea. So we had a brainstorm session together, we're talking and ideas are sparking. And eventually we hit upon the idea of trying to create communities or professional networks for people of racialized backgrounds across Europe, which was something that I wasn't aware of because at that time I was already working as a self-employed DEI practitioner, but I didn't know of anything on a pan-European level for DEI practitioners. And when I started doing the research, nothing existed. There were some things out there and there were other types of networks pan-European, but nothing for DE&I practitioners and nothing for racialized people, that intersection, racialized DEI practitioners across Europe. So it was a really exciting project, just talking to people who would fit our target demographic and asking, okay, if there was a network like this or a community, would you want to join it? Why would you want to join it? What would you expect to see? What do you want to get out of it? And getting excited with others, doing all that research, planning it out. So I spent the first 6 months interviewing people, putting out surveys, doing the research, and building out the program of what it would look like. And we started to grow, started to get members. By the time I finished at the end of last year, when I stepped down, then we had close to 100 members from, I believe, 13 different European countries, people all working in DE&I, based in different European countries and being from racialized backgrounds. And it was just a beautiful space for solidarity, for people coming together and talking about, how was your day? What tunes are you listening to? Sometimes our monthly meetings, it would be like, what are you watching on TV? Let's make a playlist about songs as well and share that with each other to have solidarity. Other times we would have more serious conversations. I'm having an issue with a client. How do I solve this? Okay, let's brainstorm together. I want information on this topic. Here are some books you can read. So it was really a place of solidarity, of friendship, of developing together, learning and growing. It was a beautiful thing that did really change me in a way, being part of this community, having it for myself as a DE&I practitioner, but also being able to create this and see what it meant to people. Every year, we come together in person and we have the whole Spark network, everyone coming together. And it was incredible. The days afterwards, people coming up to me as the community chair and saying that this was a space of healing, that they felt that they could just exhale when they were there because they didn't have to explain themselves in that space. Everybody could just be who they were. Everyone was on the same level playing field. They understood each other. They could just be real about who they were, what they were going through. And that was incredibly moving, being part of that process, and incredibly moving just being able to provide something that really added value. It was very difficult as well. And this also helped to change my outlook and I think make me better as an inclusion practitioner. It was very challenging creating a truly inclusive and equitable community. It is not an easy thing to do. And we all have blind spots. And I really came up close and personal, confronted with some of my blind spots when I'm thinking about different strategies, for instance, and then I put them forward to the group. Everyone gets a vote, has a say. And the feedback I get back was, oh, yeah, I did not think about that. Okay, yes. And it does cause some unintentional discrimination, or, it advantages some people more than others when we're looking at things like payment strategy. This is a case study that I give in the book, looking at the fact that we wanted to have a payment that all members would pay so that we could provide some money to the foundation to keep it going, to pay for the fees, to pay for things like the in-person trip each year, but also to get that sense of buy-in. Because I don't know about you, but from my experience, when you're paying for something, you tend to just, make sure you show up for the meetings, for instance, and you get your money's worth. So we don't want it to be a very large fee, but something just to create that sense of buy-in and make sure that everyone felt that they had a stake in the community. So lots of back and forth conversations with community members, asking what sort of pricing would you be comfortable with? What would the terms be? Researching as well other European communities and seeing what's out there. So I came to the first in-person meeting in Barcelona with a proposal. Okay, here is what we are going to do, and we'll have an incentive. We're going to say that this is the annual fee, but if you pay upfront rather than paying in monthly installments, you get a small discount. And some of the members immediately, quite rightly, stood up and said, that's unfair. Because if you have more money to pay everything upfront, then you get an advantage. If you don't have the money up front and you need to pay each month, then you have to pay more. That is fundamentally unfair to community members. And that is an example of one of my blind spots. I didn't see it from that angle, and I instantly thought, yeah, that's a huge problem. Because this community is created there to provide opportunities for people from racialized backgrounds, being mindful of the fact that often we are discriminated against and other professional networks aren't always open or very welcoming to us. So this is a place for us to be here. We want it to be equitable and everyone to feel welcome and able to access it. But now we're having this unequal system based on finances and who has money, who doesn't. So that's not there at all. Okay, back to the drawing board. So many more discussions, many more consultations, discussing with people as well who were happy to participate in the process and be a sounding board, till finally we came up with a clear set of rules that I outline in the book, talking about exactly how we would make it as equitable as possible. Things like there was one price, no discounts or advantages, one price for everyone to pay. We kept it as low as possible, benchmarked against other communities in Europe, and also as low as possible that the foundation could afford. And every community member was asked to pay quarterly. That way, there was also a system where people could donate more if they wanted to. So if they wanted to provide more, if they were able to, they could provide more each quarter. If they were happy just paying the set fee, that is fine, no questions asked, but providing that flexibility and providing the foundation the opportunity to maybe earn some more money as well, if people were able to give that. So really stripping it down, making sure there is that equity built in, and looking at the fact that, as I said, we have people from different starting points, different ways of seeing the world, different abilities. We need to accommodate that. But it was extremely difficult. As you can imagine, many hours, many working sessions, many consultations with community members trying to get to that point. But it was so important because we wanted it to be fair. The whole community ethos was something that is fair. So without doing what we did, it wouldn't have made sense. We would have been betraying the community members and not doing what we were set up to do, in other words. And the response was, it was very special to me, the response that we got, because I was quite scared. As community chair, emailing everybody and saying, okay, these are the rules. What do you think? Because people were not shy about sharing their opinions. People were able to speak up, and they did. So I'm emailing it out, see what people think. And the responses that I got were only positive. Everyone saying, thank you. Everything seems transparent. Everything is fair. We understand it. And we're grateful that we felt part of this process. And not one community member left as a result of the rules that were then put in place. Whereas had we gone ahead with the original proposal that I had, then quite rightly, people would have walked out. And of course, it would have been so much easier to just say, these are the rules, take it or leave it, I don't care. But if you're really trying to be inclusive and intersectional, you have to go beyond that. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that I like talking to people about, because it shows that it's not going to be an easy journey. It will be challenging, it will take time, but it is worth it because it pays off in the end in terms of people actually feeling that they are welcomed, that they are valued, that they are able to be part of an accessible community that cares about people.
Amazing. I'm really enjoying to hear what you're saying, because it also makes me think that working with inclusion, it's a learning process. And it's very transformative for those that are working in the sector, because you mentioned that you were confronted with some of your biases. So it means that you have to break also out the ideas that you had, confront yourself with that, and then say, okay, it's time to evolve. It's time to learn from that and make it better. Also requires a lot of active listening without feeling like, oh my God, they are attacking me. No, it's the common goal that we have to create this space. So what do we need to do?
Like I was just at a conference, as I was saying to you earlier, just at a conference earlier this week. And it was a gender equality conference, so it was a lot about women and men equality, etc. I'm talking there about intersectionality and really asking questions saying, what about the intersectional angle? Getting speakers to interrogate that and bring it out and really discuss the fact that, yes, gender is something that is, on the headline of the conference, but in order to actually have gender equality, we have to go below the surface. That isn't something that I would have done 10 years ago, for instance, because that just wasn't the way that my brain was thinking. I didn't know then what I knew now in terms of the theories, the models. So it's a never-ending and exciting journey of discovery and learning.
And I like to hear you talking about it because I feel that there was a lot of compassion and understanding from your side because this is a journey. We are learning. And this area of work also teaches us a lot about ourselves. And by learning about ourselves, we are able to also enlighten other people and bring more deep discussions to the spaces that we occupied. And when you were saying that also in this conference, you introduced that topic of intersectionality, what was the response of the public?
It was very good. It was the moment when I introduced it, it was actually during one of the breakout sessions. They were looking at the Reykjavik Index, which is an index where they look at G7 countries, and they're starting to expand it beyond that, but looking primarily at G7 countries and looking at the perceptions of women in leadership. So asking people, a representation of the public, do you feel that a man or a woman is best suited to lead in this industry sector, in that industry sector? So in automotive, for instance, in medical sector, in the education sector, and plotting those to see whether the general public in that country feels that each gender is equally suited to lead or not, seeing where there are imbalances. So very interesting to see that. I think, first of all, very binary terms, looking at either a man leading or a woman leading. I want to acknowledge that. But the question that I asked the lady who was presenting it was, okay, interesting data and useful to a point, but we know that when we actually start to look at the intersectional data and go below the headline point, that's when we start to see inequalities come out and a very different picture most often. And often when we start to see, for instance, what the public might think about a disabled woman in terms of capability to lead, a Black woman, a gay woman, or perhaps a Black, gay, disabled woman, whether they think that she is fit to lead, that's when we start to see that the scores will probably be worse than the perception that we see on this index for woman leader. So does the index actually take that into account? Is that something that you're measuring? Maybe you're just not showing it here. And I got, I would say, a lovely response from the lady who was presenting it, one of the head researchers of this, who was saying, very much acknowledging my point and saying that is exactly her understanding as well. But the Reykjavik Index really looks at the high level male and female, but she was talking about other data that there is available, which can show a more representational and intersectional image. So which I really appreciated. I found that, yes, of course, in specific studies, there might be limitations. You can't cover everything. You have to pick your battles, in a sense, and choose what your subject and your topic will be. But that acknowledgement that there is a wider picture there, understanding of that, and here are other things that we can have more data to supplement what we know. It isn't just, this is the only thing that we have available, and we have to draw all conclusions from that. Yeah, it was lovely to get that reception and to see that this is something that many people are speaking about. But I think it only confirms what I knew already in terms of the conversations that I see people having about intersectionality. My thought was not, with writing this book, putting it in the title, the word intersectionality, that people would be thinking, oh, what is this new term? Never heard it before. Of course, some people, the first question they have is, what is intersectionality? But many people, particularly those who are working in the gender field, they already know what this is. It's something that is well known in Europe and understood. And I see many people trying to embed it deeper into practice, which is only a good thing.
And I'm also happy that the person that you are mentioned also not only said there are other studies, but also mentioned what the other studies were. Because this also shows, okay, that is knowledge, that is awareness of what is happening. And yes, I am also keeping my eyes on it and considering it for my work. As we are approaching the end of the year, this is the last episode of the season, of the year. I wonder, because that is something that you do in the live sessions that you host. And if people don't know, I will just tell Tamara in the amazing things that she does in the live sessions that she hosts on LinkedIn. She has a part that I really like, that it's just like the status of DEI around the world. And you just like give us so many statistics. You give us in such a clear way information of what is happening. And it's so nice. At least for me, I really appreciate that. So having in mind that we are approaching the end of the year, what are for you so far the predictions for DEI next year? What do you think that it will happen? I don't know if you had also the time to stop and think about it, reflect about it, but if so, what comes to your mind?
I have to be honest, Sophia. Today, I'm not necessarily feeling very optimistic about the future of DEI. Don't get me wrong, I'm not thinking that by the end of next year, the field will have gone away altogether. I'm just thinking that the landscape is shifting. There's been some news today about some goings-on in the European Parliament, and I think confirming some suspicions that many of us had and some fears. The fact that there's a new composition since last year of the European Commission and the Parliament, and we're seeing swings towards more conservative thinking and right-leaning. And so now we're already starting to see that it looks like there will be dismantling of some key measures within the EU for things like reporting on sustainability, on diversity, that companies are required to do, which was, I would say, a very significant gain in society, because as we've seen in the UK, when you demand that companies report on things like how much they are paying people of different genders or different backgrounds, then it does manage to raise the tide, because people can't hide anymore. They have to show each other and the people working internally that, yes, there's a problem, we're aware of it, we're working on it, here is how, and that it's changing over time. So the lack of transparency, or say the loss of transparency, potentially, that we're going to see through these changes we're hearing about today, I would say is very worrying. However, I don't want to be all gloom and doom. I think we are, of course, living in pretty extreme and dangerous times in terms of ideologies, I would say, in terms of what's going on. However, I think that in terms of DEI next year, there are still projects going on. There are still people working in it. There are still DEI jobs being advertised. Companies are still investing in this. I think the landscape is changing and it's shifting, but it will still be there. People still believe very strongly in the power of DE&I to enable us in terms of well-being, our humanity, make our lives better in society. That is not going away. DEI connects to who we are as human beings. It's never going to go away. The need to feel valued, to feel included, to feel that you are being paid fairly for the work that you are doing. That's never going to go away. So it's just interesting to see how the field will continue to evolve. But I don't think that that's a bad thing, because nothing stays stagnant in life. And if something does, then it doesn't do very well in the long run. So it's a good thing that the DE&I field is evolving, that we will see changes. I don't believe that it will disappear altogether. But yeah, it will change. We're already starting to see some hints of that. And I'm interested to see how it will continue to change next year. But it is worrying in Europe, looking at the legislative landscape and looking at what's going on, just seeing what will happen. But at the same time, looking at, for instance, what's going on in France, their laws around gender equality, reproductive rights, seeing some good things going on there. So it's not all doom and gloom for society. I don't think so. But I think we're just in tough times and we're in a stage of transition. So it's a little bit of a case of wait and see.
I understand what you're saying. And personally, I see DEI has resistance. If you had to translate like in one other word, I would just say resistance. So
if you're getting backlash and if you're noticing resistance, then you're actually doing something right. Of course, it can be very tough experiencing these things. It's not to be taken lightly, but it does mean that you're doing something right. Because when you look at DE&I, by nature, it's about questioning societal norms, interrogating things, challenging the system, demanding change. And change doesn't come when we stay in our comfort zones and just rest easy. Not at all. There will definitely be people who are very angry at the thought of change, who fear it. They're scared. They feel threatened. That is where the resistance comes from. So if you're getting these reactions when you are trying to interrogate society, make it more equal, then it means that you're doing something right. Your methods are effective. People are noticing. And so, yes, it's tough, but keep going. You're doing something right.
I love it. And thank you for saying that. Thank you. We are getting to the end of the conversation, and I think that this last remark of you, it's great. But of course, before letting you go, there are two questions that I always ask guests. I'm very excited actually to hear your responses. And the first one is there a truth about working world? that no one told you when you were starting?
Ooh, I'm so glad that you were asking these questions. I was hoping you would ask them. Yay, it's my turn, finally. There is truth that I wish I had known. That nobody can read your mind and you need to speak up. Because that is something that I think, I'd imagine many of us, definitely me, I didn't think that people could read my mind. Let me start with that. I didn't think everyone was telepathic. But I think there can be the sense, and I definitely felt this, that if you're doing good work, if you're the right person for the project, for instance, if you have that knowledge, people will figure it out. They will see and they will give you those opportunities. They will come to you. That has not been my experience or the experience of anyone else I talk to. Many of the opportunities I've got have been from me putting my hand up and saying, hi, I like the sound of this opportunity. I can do the work. Can we talk? Can I be considered? Rather than my just working quietly in the corner and people noticing, ooh, Tamara should be fabulous for this. So that's definitely something that I've realized that I did not know before. That yes, humility is good to an extent, but don't be humble and sit on your talents. Make sure you speak up for yourself and ask for what you want. Because if you ask, the worst somebody can do is just say no. But at least that way you know that you did what you could. I found that it was very painful for me being passed over for opportunities because I just didn't ask for them. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten them anyway, true, but maybe I would have had I only stood up and asked for it. So I definitely made the promise to myself a few years ago that that was not going to happen anymore. I would not be left out from opportunities because I didn't ask for them. Maybe I wouldn't be right. That is fine. I won't get everything I want, but it wouldn't be because I did not stand up and say, hey, I'm interested. I can do the work. Can we talk?
That's beautiful. And you know how I see this? As a New Year's resolution. So I hope that for those that feel that, okay, I should do that, even people that are well established in their careers, that this can be like the fuel for a New Year's resolution.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's make 2026 the year.
Let's do it. And, you know, for those that are so amazed by the person that you are, the work that you've been doing, and for this conversation, as I am, thinking if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to know more about your work, if they want to buy your book also and get then to the points that we were just like here mentioning, how and where can they find you?
The best place to start is my website, KazuriConsulting.com, and Kazuri is Kazuri, or one word, KazuriConsulting.com. And you can find information there about the work that I do. You can contact me through the website. Also find information about the book, points of purchase for that. The book is currently available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So my advice is check wherever you get your books, both online and in physical stores, to get hold of your copy. Another good way is LinkedIn. Just search for my name, Tamara Makoni, or search for my company, Kazuri Consulting. But I would say, in terms of getting in touch with me, I'm most responsive to emails rather than other channels. So the best way is through my website. That comes straight to my email and I reply to everything.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful, as always, to talk to you. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure and I'm honored to be included in this. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Color at Work, edited by Augusto Picinini. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share, subscribe, rate, and comment. Until the next episodes.